Hi, everybody. Today is Monday, December 30th, and our friend Larry Johnson is back with us. Welcome back, Larry.
I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Larry, let's get started with Carter, Jimmy Carter.
Uh huh.
We've learned that Jimmy Carter dies at the age of 100, and it's a good. And how did you find his? Because he was a very important president in the history of the United States, and he wrote a book on in 2007, and it was the book is Palestine, if I'm not mistaken, is called Palestine Peace, Not Apartheid. And here is what he said, Larry, on Democracy Now! Years ago. He said about his book on Palestine, and we're going to talk about it, Larry.
Very clear. It deals with Palestine. You're not inside Israel itself, just the Palestinian occupied territories. And the second word is peace. I describe in this book the efforts for peace so far and my formula, which I think is very reasonable, for bringing peace to Israel and to Israel's neighbors. And I repeat that over and over with a strong condemnation of any kind of terrorism that afflicts innocent people by the actions of either the Palestinians or the Israelis. And the word apartheid is exactly accurate. You know, this is an area that's occupied by two powers. They're now completely separated. The Palestinians can't even ride on the same roads that the Israelis have created or built in Palestinian territory. The Israelis never see a Palestinian except they're Israeli soldiers. The Palestinians never see an Israeli except at a distance, except the Israeli soldiers. So within Palestinian territory, they're absolutely and totally separated, much worse than they were in South Africa, by the way. And the other thing is, the other definition of apartheid is one side dominates the other, and the Israelis completely dominate the life of the Palestinian people.
Why don't Americans know what you have seen?
Americans don't want to know, and many Israelis don't want to know what is going on inside Palestine. It's a terrible human rights persecution that is far transcends what any outsider would imagine. And there are powerful political forces in America that prevents any objective analysis of the problem in the Holy Land. I think it's accurate to say that not a single member of Congress with whom I'm familiar would possibly speak out and call for Israel to withdraw to their legal boundaries or to publicize the plight of the Palestinians, or even to call publicly and repeatedly for good faith peace talks. There hadn't been a day of peace talks now in more than 7 years. So this is a taboo subject. And I would say that if any member of Congress did speak out, as I've just described, they would probably not be back into Congress the next term.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right there. It explains why he was not beloved, celebrated by the Jewish community in the United States, and particularly by the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. He was seen as a bad guy. Carter, when you look at his legacy, his presidency was generally described and perceived, at least, as a failure because it ended with the Iranian hostage affair, and his failure to, keep Americans safe. That was the perception. He was elected really as a reaction to the presidency of Richard Nixon, and then his presidency led the way for Ronald Reagan. But the nice thing about Carter, he didn't get wealthy by being president. When you look at the kind of money that members of Congress have made, Nancy Pelosi, leading the pack. just the corruption that's endemic in Washington. Carter was not corrupt. So, and he was genuine in his desire to try to bring together the, Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin. So he made, put a priority on trying to promote peace in Palestine, but I'd say there's some institutional forces in D.C. that were against him. And so you can at least, Carter lived his, the end of his life was in many respects sort of reminiscent of Harry Truman. Because when Truman left the presidency, he actually, drove a car back to Independence, Missouri, where I was born and raised. And he lived in a pretty modest home compared to what, when you look at all the different mansions that Barack Obama and Michelle have. Harry was a modest guy, and he wasn't a multimillionaire as a result of, working the system. The same for Carter. What Carter said there about the Palestinian case, I mean, good God, that piece right there had to be at least 30 years old. So
the book was written in 2007.
Was it 2007?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was just, 17 years ago. So, boy, he was 83 then. Huh? I know Amy Goodman, it looked like, was the one doing the interview, and she hasn't aged too well either.
Yeah.
Age isn't kind to some people.
Yeah. Larry, if you were to compare the Israeli lobby in those days that Carter was in power and right now, are they getting more powerful? Are they getting stronger?
They're stronger today than they've ever have been. America's foreign policy, at least with respect to the Middle East, is held hostage by AIPAC. It goes back to during the presidency of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and there's been speculation that Israel might have been involved, connected in some way with the assassination of Kennedy. People go, well, wait a second, where's that coming from? Well, a month before Kennedy was assassinated, Robert F. Kennedy sent a letter to the Zionist Organization of America, ZOA. Now, that was a predecessor of the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. And notifying that they were going to need to register as a foreign agent. Well, once Kennedy was dead, no more word of that. No more word of them being the foreign agent having to register. Right now, we've got a congressman from Florida, Brian Mast. He was, I call him a failed bomb tech, because he's missing both legs, and you think, oh my God, he got wounded in combat. No, he was a bomb tech. He screwed up. So wasn't a very good bomb tech. When you got a bomb tech that's missing parts of their body, they didn't do their job properly. I bring him up because he's now been named he's chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. This guy wears an Israeli uniform. I guess at one point he served in the Israeli army. Now, and everybody goes, oh, wow. Can you imagine how people would react if, hey, I'm going to be chairing the Foreign Affairs Committee and I'm wearing a Chinese military uniform or a Russian military uniform? Good God, even a British. I mean, for the love of God, this is outrageous. Figure out which country you are a member of. This dual nationality stuff doesn't cut it. You're either an American or you're an Israeli. Choose. You're either an American or you're Russian. Choose.
Larry, here is what he said about the Israeli lobby in the United States.
Forces that you're talking about.
Well, there's an inherent commitment in America, which I share as a Christian, of a deep commitment to make sure that Israel is safe, and to make sure that Israel is safe and that Israel is free, and that they can seek for peace. So there's a strong inclination for all of us to support Israel's continued existence in peace. And that is added on to by the very effective work of the American-Israeli group called AIPAC, which is performing its completely legitimate task of convincing Americans to support the policies of the Israeli government. And AIPAC is not dedicated to peace. They're dedicated to inducing the maximum support in America, in the White House, in the Congress, and in the public media for whatever policies the Israeli government has at a particular time, and they're extremely effective.
Do you agree with Walton Mearsheimer, their new book, The Israel Lobby, about the power of AIPAC determining U.S. foreign policy?
I have to say I haven't read the book. I've read stories about it. I don't really know about the details of it, but I do know that AIPAC is very powerful and completely legitimate. I'm not complaining because that's their purpose in life, and AIPAC, I think, was organized in the distant past, I think, when Eisenhower was president, and they've grown in influence.
Yeah.
Hey, let's have RPAC and ACPAC, American Russian Public Affairs Committee and American Chinese Public Affairs. If, like I said, if we replace the name of Israel with another country, then Americans would go, wait a second. But this is, we get bamboozled with the Israeli side of it. And a large reason for that is the, widespread belief that the Old Testament is a book of Holy Scripture, and that, God's promised the land to Israel. So if God said it, it must be true. Where I have a very radically different view of the Old Testament. I think, it's a great piece of literature in the same way that Shakespeare is. But to pretend that it's was divinely written and requires people to obey its words, when you read through it, it's just there are a lot of things that just this was written by Jewish scribes when they were hanging out in the old Persian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, and it started out with oral tradition, got passed down, but once they put it into writing, then all of a sudden, whoops, hey, we can claim it's from God. Now I know I'm going to offend a lot of your viewers with that, but what I see is that book has been used to justify a lot of death, and it's been used right now to exterminate Palestinians.
One thing that he has mentioned is that the Israeli lobby, AIPAC, doesn't want peace. They want everything in favor of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes the question, do you think that if they go after some sort of peace, in my opinion, Israel would benefit from peace? Why they don't pursue that path?
Because then they'd have to accept the Palestinians as a people. They're not people. Palestinians are subhuman, don't you understand? At least from the Israeli standpoint. They're Amalek. They are to be destroyed, extirpated, wiped out. So again, these religious fanatics, these extremists, seize upon elements of the for them the Pentateuch, the Torah, for Christians the Old Testament, particularly Genesis, and in that book they talk about that Israel is entitled the covenants that were made with Abraham, then Isaac, and Jacob, are the land from the Nile to the Euphrates. And so they believe that's ours. Now, what they ignore is the fact that originally there were 12 tribes of Israel, and 10 of them disappeared, got sucked up when they were overthrown by the Syrians, and so now the ones claiming to be the descendants are a bunch of they're a bunch of Europeans and former Russians. So hey, they're not exactly what you call Middle Easterners. Bibi Netanyahu's family came out of Poland. But, they claim, this land is our land and God gave it to us and we're going to keep it. And so peace with the Palestinians, that's, Israel, that's why Israel through Mossad was funding Hamas in the beginning. They wanted to help keep Hamas alive as a viable outfit so it could help sabotage any peace agreement. It's sort of been sick and cynical what they've done over the years.
Larry, Jimmy Carter had a conversation with Donald Trump in 2019, in which he said to Donald Trump, China didn't spend a penny on the war. And that's why it's ahead of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that would help this type of advice on the part of Jimmy Carter and these talks with Donald Trump? That would help Donald Trump to decide about the future, the policy of the United States toward China?
Well, the war interest in this country, to find a new enemy to fight, it's strong. And Trump, unfortunately, has surrounded himself with some more war hawks. Elbridge Colby, the grandson of William Colby, who was the director of the CIA in the 1970s. He was the primary source for Seymour Hersh and his writing about the assassination campaigns of the CIA. It was Colby who gave the family, what they called the family jewels, all the sort of the sordid accounts of the bad deeds done by the CIA in the 50s, 60s, and into early 70s. But Elbridge Colby, the grandson, man, he's hard over wanting to go to war with China. We got to stop China at any cost. So, Trump faces a real challenge. If he follows suit with his instincts about trying to negotiate and find peace, then you know what? They can find a way to live with China and with Russia and with Iran. But there are just too many forces that are insisting that, no, we can't do that. We can't accommodate those countries in any way. We have to dominate those countries. And, people right now, these crazed Zionists here in America are just, heavily breathing, waiting for Donald Trump to come in and impose an immediate oil embargo on Iran and shut Iran's oil down and impose, draconian sanctions even beyond what Iran's already suffering, to inflict pain, to destroy Iran. I mean, I am so tired of of my country being a bunch of damn bullies, and this notion that we've got to go out and dominate and control others. It's got to stop at some point. And that, that I think, looking back on it, is one of the reasons people didn't like Carter, because Jimmy wasn't keen on getting us started into a new war. He held back with the conflicts that had started in Central America. And, when Reagan came in, we got full blown into stopping the Soviet spread, spread into Central America, then the Nicaragua and Salvador and Guatemala. But what we ignored so much back then was the political systems in those countries did not work for the people at all. and led to terrible exploitation and great deprivation. I saw it firsthand living in Honduras back in 1978. So I was actually, out of the country quite a bit while Carter was president. But, Carter's instincts were right to try to not get the United States embroiled in wars. So maybe that's what Trump was looking for, advice on how to do that.
Yeah. It seems, Larry, Sergei Lavrov was talking about that it seems that they have received some sort, I don't know how did they get that, but they're talking about a proposal from the United States to have a 20 years, postponing for 20 years the NATO's membership of Ukraine.
Yeah.
He's talking about that we're not satisfied with these type of proposals.
No, America's not listening. Niet means niet. No means no. No NATO membership for Ukraine ever. Ever. Putin's made that clear. Lavrov's made that clear. So, but the United States insists, we'll offer him a deal. We'll delay it. Russia's not interested in the delay because they know that the United States and the Europeans, if they have their way, will ultimately want to destroy Russia militarily, defeat it, and take control of the country so they can get control of the resources. I think the Russians have finally awakened to that and said, hey, these are bad people. Yes, the West is bad, Europe in particular. But the United States is right there. We've got our hands are blood drenched.
It seems that the United States feels that it's in a position of bargaining on the situation in Ukraine. But when you look at Ukraine right now, in terms of energy, in terms of their military, how is the situation right now for the United States bargaining on the issue of Ukraine with Russia?
No, what's its leverage? I mean, to bargain, you got to have, the incentive for the United States is it's costing us a lot of money. Okay, we're spending a lot of our military resources and financial resources in Ukraine, and what are we getting in return? Some guy that plays a piano with his penis that walks around dressed up like Che Guevara. Okay. And he's never happy, if we could just keep him supplied with cocaine, that might, keep him in better spirits. But, what's the United States get out of this? It's sort of a lost leader. What's the incentive for Russia? Russia's winning. They're defeating Ukraine and they're defeating NATO in the process. Why do they need to stop? This is not like a boxing match where the referee gets to step in and call a technical knockout. Hey, you're pounding the stuffing out of this guy. We'll need to stop the fight. No, you stop the fight until they're dead. That's when you stop the fight. If you're Russia. So, if the West says, we'll lift the sanctions and we'll take away the warrant for your arrest by the ICC. I don't see the Russians succumbing to that either. They're gonna do what's in Russia's national interest. What they want is for the West to stop trying to subvert and undermine them. But the West does, still today, the CIA and British MI6 are heavily involved in Georgia, using non-governmental organizations to try to overthrow a government that we don't like. Why? Because the government doesn't want to do what we want. It's not going to sell itself to America. It wants to be Georgian. And, this kind of subversion, the attempts to destroy other countries. We've seen it in Syria, in Libya. They're trying to do it in Iran. They've been working to do it in Iran now for, oh, good God, 30 years. They stepped it up when they, it was Barack Obama and Hillary that finally approved the MEK, and using the MEK then as a terrorist tool to carry out attacks in Iran. The same with the folks in Baluchistan, down in southeast Iran. Again, CIA has had long ties into those families. I remember there's actually a group of rug merchants in Bethesda, Maryland, where I lived. There's actually in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Parvizion was the name of the place, and the CIA was using them at the time to get information passed in and out of Iran regarding the hostages. So my point is, the United States is really pretty very meddlesome. They can't leave others alone, and and there's no good intent behind it. So this, what Lavrov and Putin, they've been very, very clear. If Trump and his team think that they're going to, bamboozle the Russians into accepting, okay, yeah, we'll wait 20 years before we bring Ukraine into NATO. And why are you bringing them into NATO? Now, candidly, NATO may not exist within 2 to 3 years. And I think Russia recognizes that they have a chance to put an end to this nonsense.
Does Russia need to fight NATO before putting an end to the conflict in Ukraine?
Well, it's already fighting NATO. I mean, this is a proxy war. They're killing and capturing Americans, Brits, French, Poles, Norwegians, Colombians. So, Russia recognizes that it's already fighting more than just Ukrainians. This is truly it's an undeclared war, but it's a full-fledged war.
Larry, there was a disagreement between Slovakia and Ukraine on the case of energy.
Oh, is that what you call it? A disagreement?
A huge conflict.
Yeah. I think in better words, a brawl.
Yeah. How? Because right now we know that energy in Ukraine is in a dire situation, and they don't have that to provide the people with. And right now with this conflict and this huge conflict between Ukraine and Slovakia, we know they get 80% of their energy from Slovakia. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know if it's 80%. I put a piece up at sonar21.com last night that just showed the difference between energy exports and energy imports for Ukraine going over the last 3 years. And basically, they used to be like a net exporter of electricity. Now they are a huge importer of electricity. And it's gone, they've cut, their exports have been cut by about 80%, and their imports have increased by about 80%. I mean, it's a phenomenal shift. And throughout this entire special military operation, there's still been active gas pipelines running through Ukraine from Russia. It goes through the Kursk region, actually, Suja, and then goes into Ukraine, and then from Ukraine goes into Slovakia. And so in terms of total gas exports by Russia, it's not a big amount. It's not consequential to them. It is consequential, though, for Slovakia, for Hungary, for Austria. Well, the agreement that Russia has, again, Russia abides by, it makes these agreements, it lives by them. They could have said, "Hey, we're at war with Ukraine. Screw you. We're tearing it up. We're going to stop that up." No, they kept the gas flowing, and Ukraine kept it open as well because they were getting $1 billion a year out of it. So they're making some good cash. That probably will at least supply Zelensky with a couple of months worth of cocaine. So let's look at it from that standpoint. And but the agreement ends on December 31st. Well, Zelensky, we're not going to renew it. Okay, no, we're gonna start getting our gas from the United States. Great. U.S. gas makers will love that, and it's more expensive. And so
Germany knows that.
oh yeah, they've learned the hard. These people are crazy. It's just the level of stupidity on this. So, Zelensky is basically telling that to Slovakia, hey, we're cutting you off. And, Fico said, all right, you do that, we're not going to send you any more electricity. Ukraine's already suffering because of Russia's attacks on the thermal power plants, I guess the network that supplies from the nuclear power plants that are still up and operating, coal-fired power plant. They're suffering a real deficit, lots of rolling blackouts, lots of rationing of electricity. So now they could really be in a situation where if they follow through on cutting off Slovakia will turn around and cut them off with electricity, and then they're going to be scrambling around trying to figure out what to do. And the winter, it's a cold winter now. It's not, balmy and warm. And so, it's really going to make it challenging.
Larry, there was an interview with Ukrainian officer in Ukraine in which he said that Russians cannot be stopped even when their limbs are torn off.
Yeah.
They always move forward to victory. And is there anybody in Washington hearing what these people are talking about? These people coming from the battleground, they know what's going on.
Well, I'm sure some hear it, but nobody in a position to make and change policy is hearing it. So they're still persisting with this nonsense that, the North Koreans are fighting, because Russia's lost so many people, they've had to rely upon North Korea. I mean, that thing's it's a fabrication. It's a lie, but it keeps getting repeated. You repeat it enough, it becomes true. So, yeah, nobody in Washington is paying attention.
And how about Europe, Larry? You've mentioned Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, which are so much dependent on Russian oil and gas, but how about the other countries? Germany is important right now. We know that the German economy is just reducing and is contracting right now as we talk. Is this new party, AfD, is it going to help the German people?
Well, the AfD is anti-illegal immigration, so they want to tighten up who gets to come in and live in Germany. They want to move away from this green energy nonsense that has afflicted Germany. The notion, we're going to be a solar-powered country. You live in friggin' Germany. You look at where you are on the earth in terms of how much sunlight you get during the winter. Not a lot. It's like living in Russia. You get 6 hours, 8 hours tops of daylight, and so that's not going to power solar generators. So that's what AfD is. Those are sort of its two big issues. And the third, they don't want to continue the war in Ukraine. They think it's a drain on Germany. Well, good God, can't have that. So the AfD is constantly being attacked as some sort of renaissance of the Nazis. Which think about the irony of this. They're accusing them of being the renaissance of the Nazis, whereas the Green Party is supporting in Ukraine a bunch of goddamn Nazis. I mean, swastika wearing, spouting Hitler's Mein Kampf, actual real life Nazis. So that's why, you know, that term has become almost meaningless anymore. It's not used to actually define what was a National Socialist. And so, you know, you've seen that opposition in Germany with AfD, in Romania. I mean, when the people actually voted, they were going to elect somebody who, again, was against the war. Couldn't have that, man. Had to stop that election. Stopped it cold. They tried. You've had this color revolution attempt in Georgia, which they've shut down. And these foreign organizations that are interfering in the Georgian politics that are being funded by the United States, principally. I mean, it's just, so, you know, Germany's going to have to figure out, can it save itself? I don't think it can. I really don't think, because Germany as a country, as a culture, has become so corrupted, so decadent. You know, they indulge just, you know, they have walked away from one of the foundations of Germany that made it strong for so long was its Christian tradition, and it's abandoned that. It's gone back towards, you know, slipped into paganism. And so I think, you know, Germany has now made itself irrelevant to Europe because, as you correctly note, its industry is imploding.
And everybody should know that if they go down, the European Union, it would drag the European Union with them. There is no.
Well, that's where they're headed. I mean, this, you know, the European Union's a scam. You know, there's always this vision of a greater Europe, but you know, you got to figure out what's in our national interest. Going to war, starting a war with Russia, is not in anyone's national interest. And yet the West is obsessed with going to war with Russia. And, you know, it would be one thing if, you know, Vladimir Putin and his government had been sitting around conspiring about, boy, how are we gonna build up our military so we can conquer Europe. They don't want to conquer Europe.
Larry, right now in the southern part of Syria, it seems that Israel is advancing. Do you in your opinion, what's going on in the mind of Israelis right now?
Well, they're going to take as much territory as they can, but again, they're going to run up against the logistics problem. They don't have enough manpower in their army to sustain it. They're still taking casualties in Gaza. You know, they get 2 or 3 are getting killed every day. Not to mention the ones wounded. Combat operations have, scaled back dramatically in Lebanon, but then Israel's also going into the West Bank. They just, you know, it is a legit. The whole logistics part of this is what people don't get. Israel does not have unlimited resources. They have limited resources. You know, it's just like, think about your own family budget. Yeah, you know, it'd be nice that you could go out and buy yourself a Lamborghini and a Ferrari, as well as, you know, you want to build a 10-bedroom home with a indoor pool and sauna and steam room, you know, all these great things you want. But you got to sit back and say, what can I actually afford? What do I have money to? You're not sitting on an unlimited pot of money. Well, that's the same what Israel's faced militarily. So they can only extend themselves so far before they, really stretch to a breaking point. They've got a real problem now with Syria because Turkey's doesn't really have good control of it either. The West, this Jalani that's been put in charge, the former al-Nusra, ISIS, you know, now he's wearing a Brooks Brothers suit, and they got him all cleaned up, and, you know, he's trying to sound like Mahatma Gandhi. Good God. But his fighters, they're not from Syria. These are not Syrian nationals. They're foreign extremists. So they don't have ties to Syria per se. So the whole lack of control there, and then to top it off, Erdogan's son the other day held a rally, and then he said, we got the Hagia Sophia, the what was once a Christian cathedral in Istanbul back when it was Constantinople. There's now a Muslim, one of the primary mosque in Turkey. Then he also said the Umayyad mosque in Damascus. And next, Al-Aqsa. That's in Jerusalem. They're talking about taking back Jerusalem. Israel, if Israel thought it had a threat from Syria, they haven't seen anything yet. If the Turks decide, by God, we want to recapture our empire, including Palestine, then it's the situation for Israel is going to be much, much different. And we haven't even talked about the Turks. They're enraged, wanting to destroy the Kurds, and the United States backing the Kurds. So Syria is just going to be a mess. And Israel's got to create a little bit of a buffer zone for itself. But I guarantee you, in that buffer zone, they don't have the manpower to actually secure it effectively, and you'll start seeing more guerrilla attacks on Israelis there. They'll call it terrorism, and Israelis will die.
On the other hand, we've seen that Qatar, together with Turkey, they were trying to help these people in Syria. And the way they're talking about it, Larry, the main target of these talks are, in my opinion, are Israelis, because they're asking these people to withdraw from Syria. Turkey is just talking about it.
But they're asking which people to withdraw.
Israelis to withdraw from, but Israelis are just advancing. This is a huge.
Well, they're not advancing too far, but I mean, they're basically going past the Golan Heights and trying to secure that area. But it's going to be a friction point definitely between Turkey and Israel going forward.
And as you mentioned, in the case with Kurdish people, the Kurds in Syria would be an issue, because as we talk right now, the proxies of the United States and Turkey are fighting each other.
Yeah. You got the Syrian National Army versus the Syrian Defense Force, the SDF. So, the Turks, the so-called Syrian National Army is basically a collection of jihadists. And, it is Sunni based, but in terms of being Sunni based, it's still it's not primarily drawn from Syria. It's drawn from Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. Lots of the stands. Some out of Chechnya, some of that are Russian. So it's really a group of international mercenaries. Muslim mercenaries is the best way to look at it.
I don't know if you heard, I talked with Laith Marouf in Beirut. He's Syrian. He's originally from Syria. He said that Jolani is not Syrian. He was born in Saudi Arabia.
Right, yeah.
And most of these people, Larry, are coming from as you mentioned, from other countries, and coming to Syria and deciding about the future of Syria. It's unbelievable.
Well, and again, they lack the understanding of the Syrian people. There's not a quote Assyrian. So you've got the different. You got Sunni tribes, Alawites, Christians, all these various ethnic communities, and they sort of cluster together, and then when they start the Christians already, they're arming themselves and fighting back. The Alawites in particular are. So they're carrying out ambushes. You've got some members of the actual Syrian army that have now sort of gone to the mountains, and they're launching attacks. This is just going to be chaotic, and nobody's really going to be in control. If Turkey tries to assert control over it, it's going to be a very costly endeavor. I mean, last I checked, the Turkish economy is not doing all that great.
Yeah, they're going to have an inflation of 45%, if I'm not mistaken, as 2025 is going to begin
Mm-hmm.
in the coming days. Right now, Larry, how do you see Israel having all these difficulties that you mentioned in Gaza, in Syria? They have Yemenis are just totally out of the control of Israel.
Oh.
They can do. They've shot down the United States, a drone from the United States, and
it's like the 13th. I think it's like the 13th one they've shot down.
Yeah.
Larry,
how are they so capable? Because it's not easy to do that.
Well, they've received they've got I guess their own research scientists that have developed some of this, but they've also had support from Iran, and it wouldn't surprise me that they've also now received some support from Russia. But you can't, as we're seeing with Ukraine, you just someone from the outside offering money or military technology doesn't create the will to fight. And these Yemenis, man, they've been doing this for centuries, and they are some hard people. And Israel thinks that they bomb Sana'a, they bomb the ports, they kill a bunch of Yemenis. That they're gonna start crying and they're gonna surrender. Yemen was fighting a proxy war against the United States via Saudi Arabia for the last 10 years. Showed zero interest in giving up on that. And again, that entire war in Yemen was a way to get at Iran. The broader objective of the West still is to they want to break up the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. They want to destroy Iran, destroy Russia. And just so we can be in charge, we can control it all. And the world's changing. The United States is not going to be, is going to have great difficulty in achieving those results.
The huge misunderstanding in the West, Larry, is that they think that what Yemenis, Houthis are doing is because Iran has some sort of leverage on them and forcing them to do that. It's not the case, because we know these people, these are the policies coming out of Yemen, coming out of these people, Ansarullah. In my opinion, for someone who follows the Iranian policy from inside and from outside, I don't see Iran forcing them doing this. They're doing by their policy, by their type of mindset.
Yeah. No, they're not some Iranian puppet. They're their own people. It's a shame. My friend, he's been dead now a couple of years, Patrick Lang. Pat was the defense attaché in Yemen, and he used to go hunting with I guess then the head of Yemen was a guy named Salah. But the West has had little understanding of Yemen, and again, these tribal conflicts that break out are deep seated, and I mean there are grudges that are held that go back centuries. And I told you the story before of one of my CIA buddies who was working Iranian sources, and one of the Iranians that the CIA had recruited to spy for us came to a meeting one day very upset, and visibly angry, and start talking about this horrible massacre that had taken place. And so my friend said, "Oh God, I haven't heard about this," and he starts writing down the details. And then when he asked, "Now when did this take place?" and the guy stopped and says, "It was 720 A.D." More than 1,000 years ago. But they're still talking about it like it had just happened. That is the Americans don't have that kind of mindset. We're more like Alzheimer's patients. Hell, we can't remember what we did last week. But in some of these societies where you see it in Armenia, they keep talking about the genocide, man. They haven't forgotten their genocide. So that's why the U.S. It's actually its view of Yemen is pretty racist. Just these little brown people, how dare they? They need to learn their place. Well, they've driven off U.S. aircraft carriers out of the Red Sea. The U.S. Prosperity Guardian, which is supposed to open up the Red Sea for maritime traffic, failed. It's been a complete failure now, going on. They're starting the 13th month. And again, you always get the excuse, "Oh, we're just not trying." Oh, at some point, I hope my fellow citizens in the United States just wake the hell up and recognize, we're not as powerful as we think we are. And right there, case in point, the Red Sea is still closed to Israeli ships. But, it's a lesson Israel hasn't learned either. The most powerful army in the Middle East hasn't defeated the Palestinians in Gaza. They're still fighting, despite suffering horrifically. So, all we can hope is that 2025 brings some peace, but I'm not that optimistic.
Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today. Great pleasure as always.
Yeah.
See you on Friday.
Yeah, here I am, Mr. Good News. Okay, we'll see what the new year brings. All right, anyway, take care.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too.
Bye.